It's wild to me because we're looking at a demographic cliff coming up in this industry. We're looking at all the FAFSA issues in the US that have constrained the applicant pool. We're looking at people just unsure about college in general because of the discourse, and then all, FAFSA backing that up, all this sort of stuff. To not modernize and to not optimize and to not make your website really, really good, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast on the EdUp Experience Podcast Network. This is a show dedicated to helping higher ed marketers tell better stories, create better content, and enroll more students. My name's John Azzoni. I'm the founder at Unveiled, and we're a video production company working specifically with college marketing teams to make it easy for them to scale up and even automate their student and alumni success stories through our subscription approach. And you can learn more about that at unveiled.tv, and that's UNVEILD.tv. If you're listening to this podcast for the first time, go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you. And if you're wanting your college or university's content to resonate on a deeper emotional level with prospective students, with alumni, with parents, whatever, I want you to subscribe to my free newsletter. Every week I send out tips and insights on creating more emotionally resonant content, including examples and best practices from other institutions, articles and blog posts, that week's podcast episode, and much more. So head over to unveiled.tv/newsletter and sign up. All right, let's get on with the show. My guest today is Joel Goodman. After 6 years in advancement and web marketing, Joel moved to Austin, Texas, started Bravery Media. Since 2012, he's helped colleges and universities increase their web conversion rates using hospitable design practices. Today, we're going to be talking about some insights from a Simpson Scarborough CMO study and how it relates to budget constraints and staffing and curating the best Marcom team so you can do that with the resources that you have. So Joel, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So tell me something that people would be surprised to know about you.
I feel like I'm not a very surprising guy in general, but I think one of the more formative experiences I had in my life was working in the music industry for a summer. Before I got into web stuff in general, I really wanted to be in the record industry. And so I spent a summer interning at an indie label called the Militia Group that, represent a whole bunch of bands that I liked. And in that process, did social media marketing before there was a name for it. We were like posting on people's MySpace boards or pages or whatever profiles and message boards and all kinds of stuff like that. But that was I learned a ton from that experience, and still think about it a lot. Glad I didn't go into the music industry because it's a whole nother thing. But the experiences I had that summer and especially the connections I've made have been super pivotal in a lot of the work that I do now.
Were you ever a LiveJournal user?
Yeah, I was. My very emo days, early college. Yeah. I was actually, I want to say, so I started blogging early. And I want to say there was a platform called like Blogopolis or something like that.
Okay.
That I used to blog. I can't find any reference to it anywhere. Every once in a while I'll go back and do a little search to try and find some of those fragments of my past. And yeah, I can't find it, but I live journaled for a while, especially when friends were like going to Zanga and stuff. I was definitely a live journal person.
Zanga. Oh, the early days. Yeah, I remember I was 18, like around 18, I was graduating from high school, and there was like a predecessor to LiveJournal that came out. And I just thought it was like the coolest thing. Like you could just like put your life out there and like other people could comment on it. Like that was like revolutionary. So I was like,
totally was.
Like, my girlfriend broke up with me, and then I like wrote this whole post about like how we broke up, and it was like super emo, and then she was mad at me for posting that, and I was like, whatever, it's my journal, I can do whatever I want.
That's right. I write for me, not for other people. And yeah, and it's funny how all that's changed, because like social media, even like when Twitter was a place that I actually wanted to be, you know, at the start of that, like, 2007, it was like, oh, I'm just posting for myself. And now like everything we do online is for other people.
Totally.
Um, and I posted that to Threads like last week. I was like, y'all remember when the internet was just fun and not about just selling stuff all the time?
Yeah, it's weird now because, like, I go on Facebook and I'm like, I was thinking yesterday, I saw someone post like a tribute to their best friends, like it was their birthday or something, and I'm like, I don't know this person, and it's just like, I'm like, that is now annoying to me to
Right.
like get something so irrelevant. Like,
Yeah.
if I don't know the person you're gushing about, I don't care,
Yeah.
and
It's
I don't
wild.
want to see it in my feed. So anyway, so in lieu of asking you about your personal journey into web design, although you sort of got us partway there, what would you say? So, well, first of all, tell us a little bit about Bravery, and then tell me, like, what would you say are like your main points of view that kind of come out of your involvement with Bravery and about college websites.
Yeah. So right out of undergrad, I hit a recession, and well, I exited undergraduate education into a recession, and the first real job, because I don't really count the 8 months at Old Navy in Barboursville, West
Mm,
Virginia, as a real job, but the
I
first
only
real
lasted
job I
two
had,
weeks. I
yeah,
lasted
right.
2 weeks at Old Navy.
No, man, I became a cash handler like that. They were like, "Wow, someone with a bachelor's degree wants to work here." Yeah.
Yeah.
I sold way too many of those credit cards, and I regret it. That's probably the worst thing you could do.
I didn't
But
get that far. I got fired because somebody told me to go work in the dressing room or whatever, like man the dressing room, whatever
yeah,
they call
yeah.
it. And I just did what I was told, and then apparently like the manager didn't want me to do that. And so it was that plus I checked my phone on the floor, like,
Oh
so like my
no.
girlfriend called me and I answered the phone. So they fired me. So partly my
Well,
fault, partly not.
you didn't miss a lot.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
back to you. Back to you,
yeah.
Joel.
So, well, I'm glad we have that shared Old Navy experience. But
Yeah.
I took a job as a assistant director of public relations at my undergrad alma mater, and that turned into a web role pretty quickly. This was like 2007, and they were everyone was trying to modernize. Like, we're starting to get into that 4-year website redesign cycle that seems to permeate the industry, and I uh, I ended up working at two institutions over the course of 6 years, and then started Bravery Media because I was tired of I was just tired of fighting internally. Was really kind of what it was. Like, I
Hmm.
felt like I still do it today. Just I get to be a consultant, and so it's a little bit easier.
People listen to
But
you.
right, usually, yeah. But like
People
back in the
listen to the
day,
consultant, but not the guy that has consultant level beliefs on
that's
the inside.
exactly it. That's exactly it. And like it was less that they didn't listen to me. It was just it took so much effort to get them to listen to me,
Yeah.
right? And so like when I started at Bravery, the goal was to work with a lot more institutions, work on a lot of projects, like hopefully not fight as much and that sort of thing. And so we've transitioned more from being just a straight website design or web design, as we did like smaller projects too, but web design agency, to a much more research backed and research focused agency that really focuses on usability. Like, we want to look at the user experience and take what I'm calling hospitable design practices, and the act of like caring for the users that are coming to your website rather than just making it easy. It's kind of a bunch of different things thrown into it. We want to make sure that the journeys that prospective students, their parents, donors, whoever that audience is, are interacting with on your site are easy and feel like they're they care for you, right? Like they're
Hmm.
I want to say personalized, but not personalized in the way that higher ed talks about it. Because I'm not talking about like, retargeting ads or like making your content feel creepy or putting someone's name in the
Yeah.
middle of the content, but really like
Yeah.
that it suits their journey and where they're at in it. Definitely reduces friction through that. But the idea is that when we shift our focus from this is only about the college or university's bottom line to this is about making sure these people feel cared for, that helps your bottom line, it
For
actually
sure.
helps increase the revenue. It increases your student body, increases the interactions. And so the main things that kind of come out of that point of view are, I try to simplify it, because like in higher ed, I feel like we get these big ideas and then we say like, oh no, how do we make these big ideas happen? A lot of that comes down to site speed, and I talk about that all the time. And follow me on LinkedIn if you want to hear about that stuff, or just get me going. But like a fast website converts better, and that's the bottom line. And there are so many slow websites in higher ed that that's a huge opportunity. And then the other side of it really builds on it. It is that whole wider hospitable design practice where I'm taking ideas from the hospitality industry and the ways that we feel when we have our favorite restaurants or bars, or a really good hotel experience or things like that, and finding ways to weave that methodology into the ways that we take care of our web users. But I think it extends beyond that. I think it extends to how we take care of our students that are on campus, the people that we interact with in person. I just end up staying in my web arena, web fencing, because that's what everyone knows me as, a web guy.
Cool. So you actually shared with me this Simpson Scarborough CMO study that came out, and I've mostly digested it. And I'm going to read, and we'll talk about AI as part of this. But I actually ran this through Claude. I was able to upload all three PDFs. It's like a three-part thing talking about, it's like different chapters of this study for people listening. But ran it through Claude, and Claude was able to analyze this whole thing and produce this one paragraph study or summary of it. So I'll just read this for our listeners who haven't checked this out. The Simpson Scarborough CMO study for 2024, based on a survey, is based on a survey of 268 higher education CMOs. It reveals the significant variability in marketing budgets and staffing across institution sizes, which directly impacts CMO strategies and job satisfaction. Despite some budget declines, website experiences remain a priority with a focus on quality content, especially for prospective students. The study highlights the importance of effective web governance, strategic investment in digital solutions, harnessing analytics, and adapting to emerging technologies like AI to meet the evolving expectations of content-focused younger generations. CMOs must advocate for the inclusion of websites in strategic planning, prioritize user experience and SEO, and address staffing gaps through partnerships, and leverage data-driven insights to personalize content and optimize website performance in order to stay competitive and relevant in the digital landscape. So that was an AI summary of of the study. But we're going to talk kind of we're going to hone in a little bit more on the staffing part of things. Because you and I were talking yesterday in our pre-call just about like the advantages and disadvantages of hiring external staff and in-house or external partners in hiring in-house staff. And from this study, that shows there's this big gap in budgets that kind of play into that equation. So we'll talk more about that. But what were some of your major takeaways from that report? What stuck out to you?
Yeah, there's a ton in it. There's actually still a fourth report that's coming out soon, and so if listeners haven't dug into that, that's Simpson Scarborough. They do really good research and have a lot of great things to say, and some really good people over there. I think, yeah, like you said, I think the staffing part stuck out to me because it's something I've been talking about for years, and we'll dive into that. I think the other side of it comes back around to constantly in a couple of the decks there were explanations of how leadership at these institutions tend, and I mean like leadership above the CMO position, tend to not really understand the power or value of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't fund it adequately, right? And so even if these institutions are able to hire the people that they're trying to hire for, even if they were given, a little bit more budget. They're never given enough to actually make that huge difference. They're always kind of constantly trying to catch up. And that's been systemic in higher education for years. We see that. I mean, it just goes in cycles. Like we see that all the time. And one of the things that kind of troubles me about this industry is where money gets spent and the lack of expertise to understand what a return on that investment is supposed to look like and what is actually coming back to it. And so like when you look at web investment, usually it's lower than it should be. But then at the same time, they're not hiring partners or they're not hiring the right people internally to get that money back really, really fast, and we've focused at Bravery on whenever we build something, whenever we design something, part of this goes back to that hospitable design practice. We want the institution to have that investment in their website or that web property paid for as soon as possible. It shouldn't be a 3-year process after you redesign a website for you to realize that money back and start making profit on that investment. And a lot of times it is, or it's worse than that. You put in $500,000 into a website redesign, it launches, but then you actually don't know what data is supposed to come back. And so you can't measure it. And someone higher up just decides that, oh, it's not working. And so you get in that 4 to 5 year cycle of, well, cool, now we got to drop another $500,000 or $250,000 on a new website redesign. But you're never actually measuring what the results are when that new site comes out. And so we always advocate for making sure that anything that goes out on the web is measurable, but measurable in terms that are tied to revenue, like actually tied to money. And in higher ed, a lot of times we don't like to talk about the money side of it, right? But the industry on the marketing side, at least, is already firmly centered in business practices. It's just figuring out, are the business practices there understood by everyone or understood by all the people that should understand it? Or are we kind of just like playing at it a little bit and hoping that we understand those things,
Yeah. Quick break here to tell you about how you can scale up your student and alumni success stories without taking on a bunch of extra work to manage with our video storytelling subscriptions. Look, making even one video takes a lot of legwork. There's lots of steps to go through to hire a video vendor, herd all the cats, and then you usually get one video out of that. But what if you could do a similar amount of work, but this time get a year's worth of storytelling content that you can use across the board to highlight your various programs, where pretty much all you had to do was find the stories and hand them off, and even that will help you with. Well, at Unveiled, our aim is to take the friction out of telling great stories. So whether you're a big school or a small liberal arts college, you can tell compelling stories all year round and fill your content calendar with video content. And we can get this done for you virtually anywhere in the world, certainly anywhere in the US. The way it works is we're going to batch shoot a year's worth of content and then every month drip out to you one new student or alumni story, along with a whole package of additional video content. So you'll get the full length story, which is usually 2 to 3 minutes. You'll get a 30-second and a 15-second cut down of that story to use in various shorter contexts. And then you'll get 8 topical videos. And those topical videos are like, while we have this student sitting here on camera, let's ask them whatever we want. We'll work with your school to come up with a list of questions that touch on those things that you like to promote. So maybe it's scholarships or career development opportunities or on-campus housing or whatever it is. So that's the package of videos. You'll get that package every month, every single month. And not only can you take those polished videos that we deliver to you and crop them vertically and, make great TikToks and Reels content, but you get to keep all the raw B-roll and interview footage that we shoot. Imagine the possibilities of 12 students or alumni following them around for half a day in classes, in labs, in whatever other visual contexts. And that's just an entire library of B-roll that you get to use forever and repurpose at no extra charge. It's all included in your subscription. So head over to unveiled.tv, that's unveiled.tv, and check out our work. You can find pricing information there as well. And if you'd like to chat further, you can book a call with me on the website there, and I'd be happy to talk about how we might be able to support you and also answer any questions you may have. Okay, back to the show. I found it interesting that 56% of the respondents state that their website is not part of their institution's strategic plan. 42% have no plans to modernize their user experience in the next EDU redesign. I thought that was weird. Like 42% of people are like, we're going to redesign this thing, but we're not going to make it that good.
Sean, it's wild to me because we're looking at a demographic cliff coming up in this industry. We're looking at all the FAFSA issues in the US that have constrained the applicant pool. We're looking at people just unsure about college in general because of the discourse, and then all, FAFSA backing that up, all this sort of stuff. To not modernize and to not optimize and to not make your website really, really good, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, I mean, that it doesn't make any sense to me because it is the largest possible marketing device that you have. Like, most schools want to dump a bunch of money into paid advertising. That's cool. Sure. But when someone gets to your website, if it's slow, if you don't have proper journeys in place, if they don't know what to do when they get to your site, then you just wasted money on that ad. Like, and so like, if you're not paying attention to that side of it, you're a really terrible steward of all that funding, of all that money that's coming in, right? And the website should be the first thing that people look at. It affects your search engine rankings. It affects whether AI is going to be able to recommend you to people. And one of the things that we've seen coming up in a lot of different sites, and I think Simpson Scarborough referenced this in one of their decks, is that younger generations, like the next generation of students, are totally happy to use like ChatGPT style interfaces for searching the web and figuring out where to go. Instead, we want to put all those tools on our website, forgetting that they have to find us first, right? And right. So then we make our websites worse because we think like that's what we need to do. It's shy, but no, just make your website usable and tailored to a specific type of person coming to it, and then put the other stuff on top of it, because a good, fast, coherent, well-written website is going to affect all of these findability type of tools that sit outside of our institutions. We just don't look at it that way, and leadership doesn't tend to look at it that way or realize how important it is, maybe. And so your CMOs and your marketing offices are just stuck without the funding to do it properly, or with, even worse, mandates from provosts and vice presidents and the president for things that aren't going to move the needle at all for the institution.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the AI thing, I think that it really is becoming increasingly clear that like Gen Z, maybe millennials too, I don't have the data on that, but for sure Gen Z is wanting things curated for them, and like very much willing to use an AI tool that's going to take a lot of this manual search work out of the process. And yeah, it's becoming like the new Google, and I find myself using it too, where I'm just like, I don't want to really search every recipe, but just like, tell me how to do this.
Right.
Like I was grilling a flank steak the other night for my daughter. My daughter loves steak. It was her birthday.
Nice.
And I don't grill that much. So I got this app called PI, and it's just like you like almost like call it, and you just have a conversation with it. So I was just like, how many minutes on each side do I grill this flank steak? And it just told me, and I'm like, I don't need to go to like a website,
Right.
you know,
Well,
for
and
that.
especially for
So,
recipes, read through someone's life story before you get to
oh
the
God,
actual
yeah.
method and everything. Yeah. And
The jump
I
to
mean,
recipe button should be mandated.
but I think that, I mean, I think there's an interesting point in there within our own websites, especially as like institutions are trying to put, uh, AI chatbots and AI assistants to help people figure out stuff on the websites. Like, what that indicates is that your website's content strategy is bad. It means that you haven't organized your content in a way that's easy for people to understand. You haven't written it in a way that's engaging and helps people understand what you're trying to get across. And then you're giving them a way to bypass all of that branding, all of that storytelling, all of that stuff. There's something to learn there. If people don't want the story, then get rid of the story, maybe. But
Hmm.
also, if you still need to communicate that kind of stuff, why are you giving them a way to bypass your brand, bypass making some sort of affinity connection with your institution by putting an AI assistant in front of it?
Yeah.
That could be lying to them too. I mean, we're still early days. This technology is young. Like, like a
Yeah.
year ago, no one publicly was using this stuff. Like, it's still super, super young. And I just, uh, I think we jumped the gun a lot in higher ed without like really, really thinking through the implications of some of this stuff. And whether
Yeah.
or not it does make an experience better for someone or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of correlations, between budgets, not enough budget going towards the website, not enough optimization going on, not enough understanding of the student, the prospective student journey. Um, and I see, we see a lot of that in the video world too. And so, obviously you're a web guy, I'm a video guy. So I want to get into specifics that, were kind of recovered from the report. And one of them was, as we talked about budget constraints related to staffing, the decision whether to hire in-house or external partners, because that also comes into the equation as well.
Yeah.
Um, so from a website perspective, what concerns do you have about the role of the in-house web designer?
I don't like I'm going to hedge this with like I don't want to sound like a jerk. But some of this might sound like super critical. And this isn't a diss at any web designers that I know in higher ed, but I think when this comes directly out of the report, I think when you look at the salary levels that institutions put in place for any web position, whether that's a developer, or a designer, or a content strategist, or whatever, they're so far below
Hmm.
the not just the kind of industry average or like even median in general web design or general web development. They're not priced to get the best sort of person in that role, and we are a hyper competitive industry. Every university offers basically the same thing, and so to be able to stand out, you can't do that just on your programming, and you're probably not doing that on your programming.
Right.
Your academic programs are the same as someone down the street with maybe a couple of little tweaks here and there, but that's not enough for anyone to understand. You have to make that difference in your marketing, in the way that you tell your stories, in the way that you design your collateral, in the way that you provide a better experience. And in order to do that, you need to have web designers, web developers, web marketers in general that are better than everyone else in the industry, and most people don't, because they're not spending the money for that. And so there should be competition there. There should be competition in terms of the quality of staff that we are targeting and hiring in higher ed. They do that on the faculty side all the time. But the reality is that faculty don't sell your school unless you're looking at graduate programs, and even then
Hmm.
it's a small sliver of people that are paying attention to that. That's one of the bigger concerns I have. It's that we don't recognize that these are important positions that require a lot of talent and require a lot of learning and require a lot of thinking, and we don't make those positions attractive enough to get the people
Hmm.
that are creating the great experiences in startups or big tech companies and that sort of thing. So our experience design always ends up being subpar to the rest of the experiences that prospective students interact with every day on the World Wide Web, right? Because no
Hmm.
one just spends all their time in higher ed looking at higher ed websites except for higher ed pros.
Hmm.
We're the only ones that look at our websites all the time. Prospective students are interacting with banking software and e-commerce and music apps and all this kind of stuff, and we can't compete with that level, and we can't even compete with each other because the bar is so low in higher ed. And I don't know that hiring an in-house web designer is smart, because you also can't change higher ed to go to more of a product design standpoint and work in product cycles. It's always just like, it's fire drills all the time. It's like, oh, this is a problem.
Hmm.
President wants this. Provost wants this. VP wants
Yeah.
this. Um, and so, like, if you have someone on staff, they're just doing busy work. They're not able to strategize about the design that they're putting in place. Also, and Simpson Scarborough mentions this in the website part of their report, or their study, the fact that so many schools try to do website redesigns in house is scary, because they're never going to get it done. There's so much work. I mean, the reason that you go and work with an agency is because you're getting 3 to 10 people working on this website redesign at any given time, for the different parts. And they still tend to take a year plus to get done. I think that could
Hmm.
be shortened. I think part of that's political stuff on the institutional side. But trying to do that with one underpaid web designer who has probably never tackled that before, and a bunch of people that have multiple responsibilities across your institution, isn't sustainable for those people. Like, you consider their mental health, you're going to burn them out. I've been there. The last campus job I had, I redesigned and launched 8 websites in 6 months. And
Woo.
uh yeah, I mean, like, it affected my health. It was bad. Like, it's part of
Hmm.
why I left university work,
Yeah.
and started my agency. um but that's a reality that we have to face, is that i- verticalizing all of this stuff and trying to get all of these positions in house is not as simple as people think. You have to have someone that can run a product team, because that's part
Hmm.
of what this is. If you want to compete. If you don't want to compete, you're just gonna you're going to close. I mean, honestly, like, I mean, just like point blank, you look at the closures that are happening across higher ed. A lot of times there's smaller institutions that definitely can't afford the types of people that they need. And it's just misstep after misstep in what they're paying for, who they're hiring, how they're configuring their teams. So one of the things I really liked, that Simpson Scarborough said when they're talking about staffing, was that it's important to reassess the staffing that you have, because if you can go super lean in house and then rely on agency partners, you can move faster, you can get better quality out the door, and you can
Hmm.
see results a lot quicker. And I've been saying this for 5 years. Like, this is not a new thing. It's higher ed just keeps kind of digging itself a little bit deeper, and it makes it a lot harder to get out of the ditch. It makes it a lot
Yeah.
harder to get back into a competitive stance, um, because someone refuses to change their thinking, or doesn't realize it because they're not cut out for whatever.
Yeah. And I see this on the video side too. And I posted on LinkedIn last week uh, a post about in-house versus external, and there seemed to be a lot of resonance with that because I've seen jobs posted for like a full-time video producer for like
Yeah.
$45,000 a year, and I'm like, who's gonna do that? Like, like
Yeah.
what respect? There, nobody,
It's a
nobody,
lot of work. Like, no one understands
like,
how long it takes to edit, let alone shoot
yeah.
and try to tell a story, within all that.
Yeah, no respectable, like, no person that, like, actually has their foot, like, in the door and, like, is doing real projects and working on really, like, you know, big stuff, is going to accept a $45,000 a year salary. It's just not gonna happen. Like, there's such a gap between quality in that sort of entry level salary versus what you get when you hire an external
Right.
crew. I mean, one day of filming with a small crew, like small crew,
Yeah.
is like $2,500 a day,
And
you
that's
know,
assuming
and
that
that,
that's assuming that you own your own equipment. You're not renting cameras and lenses and the stuff that you need to, right? And so it doesn't take into account all of the money that the firm, that the video firm has spent on the back end, that a
yeah,
lot of times, like professional photographers, special videographers will like fly to a place and just rent the equipment that they need. I mean, it's going to be
yeah,
more than $2,500 for that, like in a lot of
yeah,
cases.
yeah. We underestimate. Like, I think it starts with like, number one, it starts with this pattern of allowing, the Marcom team allowing themselves to be order takers, and we've talked about this
Yeah.
in the last two consecutive podcast episodes about the short order cook versus the vision leaders. And I think
Right.
when you have a short order cook mentality in your Marcom team, then yeah, you're gonna just go, well, we need to be doing video, so let's hire a video guy that knows how to run a camera, knows how to use Adobe Premiere, and then we'll just open the floodgates and let all the requests come in. We'll try to monitor some of the requests and prioritize a little bit, but like, we've got a video guy, we've checked the video box. Like, that's completely different
Right.
than having a video strategy
Right.
and knowing like what types of videos are going to convert people into paying students, and what does that cost? How can we optimize the cost for that? If you just want to crank out like videos and you just like that kind of salary, 40 to $50,000, like that will get you maybe like a video technician that technically like
It's,
knows some stuff
it's a new
about video, but
graduate.
like,
It's a
yeah,
new
that's not
graduate that
gonna,
came out of a digital media program or something like that,
right,
and that's fine. Like, but you're not gonna hang on to them is the thing, right? And like you were saying, you're
right.
not going to get the strategy. You're not going to get someone with experience, and so you're not going to get that result of paying students. And so, John, I don't know if you saw this in the CMO study, the budgets and staffing reports. Like Simpson Scarborough include a bunch of data at the end of it. It's not a huge sample size, but of those 228 schools or whatever it was, 79% of them report having a full-time videographer role on staff,
Hmm. Yeah.
which to me is not surprising. And I
Yeah.
constantly see job postings, like you were saying, for videographers in higher ed. But I just question if that role should be there. Like I question like whether they should be hiring for that role at all when
Hmm.
it can be so much more cost effective to go out to someone else, to go out to to go to you and have you and your team produce videos that have strategy and are thinking about the brand side of it. And I think about that same thing on the website. Like, why would you have a full-time web developer in house when you're not even structured to fill their time with work all the time? Like,
Yeah.
they will go and find stuff to do, but like if you're smart about how you're running a website, if you're smart about how you're producing video, if you're smart about how you're producing any sort of content, you're going to be planning that stuff out. And then it doesn't take as long to come up with the execution side of it, right? And instead we just think like, no, we need a full-time person to do this. Like, get the fractional time. It's so much less
Hmm.
expensive. And at the same time, think about think a little bit beyond the actual price of the thing and think about what you're going to get back from it, and tie that content, tie that website, tie that development work to actual fiscal goals or actual enrollment goals versus just thinking, well, we need visibility. You got to be strategic about visibility too.
Hmm. Yeah, and obviously, you and I are biased to some degree because we have vested interest in schools hiring external partners. But at least from a video perspective, I mean, I could tell you, like, I've met some really talented in-house folks, and what's uh, I think a lot of what's maybe keeping them there is the mission of the school, the type of work they're getting to do, or the fact that they don't want to. they don't want to be entrepreneurs.
Sure.
They want a steady paycheck. So definitely like the I don't know what they're getting paid. So I can't factor that into the equation. You definitely can get really really great talent, but I think at when there's that sort of like lobbing over the fence of like, well, we'll get video going here, and the first instinct is hire staff. Like, you're not thinking about a the level of talent you can get for that price, but b the benefits, the cost of managing that employee, the cost of the equipment. So if which is
Right.
like 20 grand, at least 20
At
grand if
least.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
and so all right there, I mean, you're starting to push six figures, even if you're paying kind of a crappy salary. And so it's like, man, you could get a lot of really intentional work done from an external partner for that money, and they're going to come in and they're going to have that mindset of like, they're not with the bullshit of the of the school. Like,
Yeah.
they don't care. Like, they don't answer to any sort of provost or president that that's, and they're just going to say, this is what I think we should do, completely absent from the politics that your internal videographer is going to be sort of worried about job security
Yeah.
and wanting to
Right.
toe the line and things like that. So it's just, I talk to enough in-house videographers. We have a community for in-house videographers that I run, and one of the big patterns is just like, they just kind of like, they commiserate about the fact that like their job ends up being, the president needs to deliver a message in an email, so
Sure.
we need to
Yeah.
go film this, or the the nursing school has an event, and so we need to go film that. It's like, what are you going to use that for? Like, how is that event like? No, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
who cares that
Yeah.
like some random person that no prospective student knows about was speaking? So you're going to get shots of them at the podium, and you're going to get
Yeah.
people eating food, and it's like, why are we investing the in-house videographer's time
No
in
one wants to watch a
documenting
video of
something like
someone
this?
chewing food, No one wants to
Yeah,
watch that
no
video.
one. I mean, yeah, maybe it's fun for the people that already go there, that are like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that was a fun event, or there I am in that shot, yeah, that was a funny moment, but
Yeah.
like, but if that's the kind of work that you're using the videographer for, like, think about how much
Yeah.
you know this is dire circumstances here with like this enrollment cliff and all this stuff, and a lot of schools, like you mentioned, are closing. Like, we shouldn't be spending time on on just fulfilling orders and filming events and
Yeah.
and things like that.
Well, how common is it for these videographers that you talk to either have someone in a producer role or to have to be the producer themselves, as well? Like someone that's actually thinking through the strategy of those videos. And I
Hmm.
think in general, like, I mean, CMOs, some really good CMOs will take the time to do it, but like you're still kind of getting into this generalist sort of thing,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I remember like my first higher ed job as an assistant director of public relations and then like a web content coordinator also had me learning how to shoot with a DSLR and going out to alumni events and shooting photos, which I was like, other duties
Yeah.
as assigned, I guess. And
Right.
like,
Right.
I'm glad I picked up that skill, but at the same time, not my job. Like, like
Yeah.
we had a full-time photographer and print designer. And, my boss was also a photographer. It's like these things were, I mean, even commencement, I had to shoot every once in a while. And I know that if we were doing video, we wouldn't have had someone in that producer role, like being strategic, helping craft the story, helping tie it back to marketing goals. And it does end up being that order taking that you were talking about. It's, yeah, we just need someone to get footage of this. And it's like, why? Like,
Yeah.
and now we need someone to throw together a snappy little video that we can toss on YouTube or
Yeah.
whatever. And it has no actual value to the underlying mission because there was no strategy or intent or purpose behind it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the point I'm trying to make is not necessarily that an in-house videographer is a bad idea, but I think it's 2 points. It's one, if you're going to have an in-house videographer, you need to really carefully prioritize that person's work towards
Yeah.
stuff that's actually going to bring in money to the school, and not just be, spinning their wheels just doing busy work. The other thing is that, um, to really have a thriving in-house production team is more than just having one person that knows how to shoot and edit videos.
Yes.
It is, like you mentioned, a producer, at least a producer slash director. That's like one person. That's typically the role that I play, and that's the role that I played at previous production companies. Is really conceptualizing each project, working with the client, understanding the messaging, adding my input, all the stuff, getting the right team on board, and then managing that project and shooting and directing and blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
so that kind of stuff. It's that leadership, organizational person, and then somebody to edit full time. At the very least, like
Yep.
one person to produce and shoot, and another person to edit.
Yep.
But beyond that, I mean, ideally you're having someone to produce and direct, someone to do the filmmaking, the cinematography, the lighting, and all that stuff, and then someone to edit. So when you talk about
Yeah.
2-3 different salaries, easily you're
Yeah.
like crossing the $200,000
Yeah.
mark just on that. Why, you can get a lot of videos from an external partner that's going to put a team of 5 to 10 people on this thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and save a
that are
lot of money.
quick and decisive and are thinking about the strategy as well. And I think it brings up a good practice. It's identifying where your institution fits in the stack, and really seeing if it makes financial sense to have a video team. I think for larger schools, or schools that are like in like massive growth phases and just have a lot of liquidity, sure, like doing in-house production, totally cool. Like I've seen that work out really well. And
Hmm.
even in that Simpson Scarborough data, like a lot of the, like, it's like 93% of large institutions had a full video team doing that production work. But it's because they have a full video team doing production work. It's not just hiring a
Yeah.
videographer and expecting them to be everything video people, right?
Right.
Which
Yeah.
you
That's
can't.
the
Like, I mean,
point too.
yeah, most people that can shoot, like, can totally edit. They can, they can put a story together, but it is a lot more taxing, and it's a lot slower when you have to do all three of those things, right? And that's why production houses don't work on one person doing all that stuff.
Right.
It's not sustainable.
It's very not sustainable, and there was times at my previous job, I was a creative director at a production company, and it would get so crazy sometimes. Like, just tons of work coming in. I was the one guy
Yeah.
that was managing everything. And then we had like one main editor that was doing pretty much all the important editing, and then we had like a really junior guy making like maybe 35 or 40,000 a year doing like assistant editing and assisting on shoots and stuff like that. 3-person team, and this isn't like fully due to that reason, but I had like a complete mental breakdown in 2018, and I was out of work for 3 weeks. It just got too much.
Yeah.
I just felt too much pressure. And there was a lot of other things that played into that, but that was one of the big stressors. Was it was getting really crazy, and I was carrying the weight of this entire of everybody's creative, every client's like creative
Totally.
desires and projects on my shoulders,
Yeah.
to manage. And if they weren't good, and if the client wasn't happy, it was my fault. So that's just a lot of pressure to put on one video. Then I wasn't even doing all the shooting and editing. In fact, I was doing very little of that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure to put on one person that's doing that plus the shooting and the editing.
Yep. Yeah. It's a ton, man. It's a ton.
But I want to ask, so we've talked about like, what it could look like to have an in-house video team that is actually thriving. So like if you're really going to make the investment in it, here's how you would do that. But what does that look like for a web design? Is there ever a scenario in which an in-house web um, creative team is going to make sense, and what does that investment look like?
I think there's always a scenario where it can make sense, and I know that there are some institutions that do this and do it really well. It comes down to it's very similar. It comes down to like having a complete web team, and I would advocate for running it more like a startup or product team, right? So like more like a tech company and how they run, going through product features and cycles and like all of this sort of stuff. Like it makes it very very strategic, very intentional, any change that happens to the website. I think the status quo tends to be, all right, we've got a web designer and they don't have enough work to do on the website, so we're also going to make them design graphics for social media, and we're going to make them design graphics for all of this sort of stuff. Hi, I did that for a while. Sometimes we're going to make them go shoot videos for the website, like that sort of thing. And then you might have a web developer. You might be relying on IT resources, and in general, IT does not like that. I've worked with a lot of IT departments. I know a lot of people that work in IT. They've got other stuff to do, and I think that they should be focused on that other stuff, because one thing that no one talks about is how terrible the digital student experience is on most campuses, and like that could help you with some retention. Just a little,
Mhm.
it's a little tidbit drop there. Um,
That was free. We won't charge them for that one.
Yeah, right. That one's free. Yeah, let your IT focus on the student experience, or even better, have a separate design team working on your student experience. But that's a lot of money too. Um, but I think I think the proper setup is you got to have a project manager, or product owner, product manager. You have to have at least a UX designer, researcher sort of person, someone that's going out and validating this stuff, someone that can do UI. The UX UI position could be combined in some cases, because they are kind of connected. You would need a front end developer, and then you would probably need some sort of full stack developer that can do stuff. And you need these people to be paid well because you need them to be talented, right? And so at a
Yeah.
bigger institution, I think it makes sense to have a web team. And I think they have the flexibility and lateral ability to design a really good product team and put them in place. But usually at those large institutions, they don't do that. They decentralize all their sites. And so they have 15 or 16 or 20 different small web teams in a bunch of different places. And they all kind of compete with each other. And I know some really great ones. I mean, I know that UT and Austin, a couple of their schools have really, really great web teams managing their websites. Um, and it can work in a decentralized sense. But if you had everyone together, if you had similar to how some of these decentralized marketing offices will have like a central marketing office, and then they kind of like help out the different, decentralized offices, you could have a central product team and then have sub teams off of that are working on the websites and the technical things for all of the different schools from a marketing perspective, and make that work really well. It's just a complete change in how higher ed has always done it. But we're still trying to fit 30, 40-year-old methodology into the modern world when everything has changed from, since then. And
Mhm.
it doesn't pay off very well. But that would be my recommendation. Like if you were assessing whether you should have an in-house team, you need to be able to say, can I afford to have a product owner, a developer, a designer, a UX researcher, UX designer type of person, an accessibility person to check all that stuff. Don't rely on plugins or things like that. If you're gonna do it, like do it right and get all those people in place,
Mhm.
and go from there. But you're looking, like you were saying, with video teams, I mean, like you're looking for like good versions of those people. I mean, you're looking at upwards of 700, 800K a year without benefits,
Yeah.
without the equipment, without the
Yeah.
costs for the software that they need. And most, I mean, I don't know of an institution that's prepared to pay upwards of $1 million a year on just the staffing for that sort of a team.
Just for the website too. I mean, that's
Just for
not
the
even.
website. Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Except for
got
big universities that can afford it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, to put it into perspective, one of my main filmmakers I work with on a contract basis on my team, um, I mean, he shoots all kinds of like commercials,
Yeah.
feature films, documentaries, and stuff like that. He's really good. He's a really good director slash cinematographer. Um, and he told me like, oh, last year, doing taxes or whatever, made like 450 grand. Uh, just for him, like just for people hiring him and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
renting his gear and stuff. Like, what would compel someone at that level um to go make $60,000 at a college and work for somebody else? You got to
Yeah.
think, like, if you're looking for a commercial cinematic level thing, I mean, that's an extreme case. There's not a lot of videographers, filmmakers out there making like $500,000 a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
um but even say it's 150 a year, that's pretty realistic.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
What's going to compel someone to make 60?
the underlying thread here though is that higher ed can't fill these roles that they have open for that very reason.
Yeah.
It's because someone like him, maybe not making 450K a year independently. I mean, like, he obviously, but if you, like you were talking about, like, if you're a person that doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, that wants to have the stability of a paycheck, given with layoffs in tech and everything else right now, I don't know how much stability is really there at this point. But if you wanted to go that kind of more traditional employment route, for whatever personal reasons you have, um, you're going to find higher paying jobs outside of higher ed to do the same thing. And they're going to be less stressful and they're going to be less frustrating. There's going to be different, but probably fewer political fights happening
Right.
internally. And we just can't compete with the salaries. We can't compete with the benefits. We can't compete with any of that sort of stuff. And so the people that do stay, I mean, if people are sold on the mission, like, good on them. Like, I was there for a while, but like, I would secretly probably encourage them to go look outside of the industry for something that'll pay them a little bit more and allow
Yeah.
them to do more creative type of work, and probably more structured work that makes them feel a little bit less scattered all over the place.
Yeah. So we got a few minutes left. I'm gonna make sure we hit the AI part of our conversation, because I know with generative AI, Marcom teams are thinking, how can we save money in this area? I think I'm a big proponent of AI for certain things, for things that you could otherwise do yourself. It would just take you 10 times longer, that kind of stuff. But like, from a web perspective, what t- talk about the blessing and the curse of AI.
I think we're jumping too quickly, with too many feet, more than just our 2 feet into the AI pool in a lot of cases. And I mentioned it kind of at the top of the episode, but I think that we want to fit AI into things that aren't problems yet. Like, we're like, it can solve this thing. We students can talk to an AI chatbot, and really
Mhm.
the only reason why an AI assistant on your website should be there is because your UX is bad, and actually it shouldn't be there because you should fix your UX either way. Um, I worry that we're going to get to a point, kind of going back to like video type of stuff, where um, marketing offices just think like, oh, well, cool, there's all these generative video platforms that are coming out, or video models that are coming out. You just use some of that for our B-roll, and we start to lose the authenticity side of what we have been saying for years and years and years is the defining characteristic of higher education marketing, right? Like, people want more authenticity. So if they want more authenticity, what do? Let's put an large language model in front of them, so they're not interacting with an authentic person. I don't understand that thinking. I don't
Yeah.
understand that gap. So
Let's get one that sounds natural, that sounds authentic.
Right, it sounds like a person, and then we gotta
Yeah.
figure out, well, is it always telling the truth? Is it gonna get us in trouble? Is it making stuff up? How well have we trained it? Why are we using a third party like OpenAI? When everyone uses the same generative models or uses the same large language models, like at what point are we all just the same thing?
Hmm.
Um, but even then, like there's huge changes in search engine rankings that are taking into account whether content is actually engaging and or whether it's just kind of like milled and farmed out. And like, I just I worry that in a race to save time so that we can do I don't know what else. I don't know what we're going to fill all of this new time that we have, that AI is giving back to us with, um, that we're outsourcing the wrong things to AI. Like we're not using it to help us research. We're not using it to help us make sense of data and information that's coming in. We're using it to write website copy or write video scripts or make images. And I mean, I'll use Midjourney for images for like podcast episodes and for social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but at some point, like for me, small business, like I feel like that's kind of okay, and I'll use my own photography when I have it and it makes sense. But
For
like for
sure.
an institution that has a videographer on staff or has access to, has money and budget that could go to actively pursuing these sorts of things, we're taking that human element out, um, of the wrong places. And it worries me because of the buzz, and I know how higher ed always responds to technology buzz, and there just needs to be a little bit more thought that goes into it.
Yeah, I'm with you on the research stuff, making sense of data, finding things that would otherwise be a manual hunt for. Um, yeah, I definitely think like yeah, I'm all on board with like Midjourney, and that kind of thing. Sometimes it's just like you just need an image that communicates the sentiment of your blog post or
Right.
breaks up the text a little bit or whatever. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's when people are outsourcing entire creative roles to AI that then it becomes a problem. I think if you're driving the ship and if you're treating AI like an assistant, that's kind of the boundaries for me. Is like I'm not gonna copy and paste anything from AI, but it's very a super useful editing assistant.
Sure.
I have it analyze transcripts and time code and stuff like that, and help pull out like, oh, tell me all the places where she talked about this thing or something like that. That's assistant editor work. It's pulling selects and it's that kind of stuff. Um, but when it's just here, copy and paste, write this blog post, copy and paste, and
Right.
let's do 20 of we could do 20 of these now, and we can fire our content writer.
To
um
for I like it for menial tasks. Like we're launching this website called SpeedyU that is a database of every college and university website, in the US, Canada, UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand. And one of the things I wanted to do was go through and get some cohort type of stuff. So I hop into Perplexity and I ask it to get a list of every business school, with its URL, its city and region within Australia. And it comes back with that full list for me. And it'll even format it into a CSV file so that I can import it into our database. Like that's the stuff that makes a lot of sense. It saved me a ton of time, it saved me like hours of like just looking at Google links, right? That stuff makes a lot of sense to me, but outsourcing it to write content and then just doing a light copy edit on it, I, I like you're gonna run into differentiation problems,
mhm.
and you're gonna run into brand problems. You're gonna sound fragmented, or you're gonna sound completely generic, depending on which path you take. Um, and half the time figuring out the right prompt to get good content out takes longer than writing the thing in the first place. Like just write it, just or like write something and have it do a quick edit for you. Use a tool like Grammarly or something like that to help tighten up the stuff that you've written already. um but yeah, just farming out the creative stuff to something that is not creative. It is predictive, it is built on algorithms, it is scientific, it is data driven. or data backed, you just lose creativity and you lose authenticity in that process. And when higher ed loses what little bit of authenticity we're able to put out there already, I think
Mhm.
we're going to be in big trouble.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I've tried to pull. I did a video tutorial for my newsletter audience at one point about using Midjourney for like populating blog posts with images, and one of the things that had to sort of chuckle about in this tutorial was like how generic like it took diversity. Like it really tried to like kind of get an equal but like unrealistic mix
Yeah,
in there of every culture from around the world, of these students like studying together or collaborating or something like that. So you got to be careful about that because people see right through that.
totally.
Yeah. But okay, so wrapping up here, I want to give you the last word. Talking about budgets and staffing and curating a great Marcom team with external or internal partners and web design and blah, blah, blah. What would be your sum it all up for us? What are your final thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're in a budget crunch, find ways, like especially if you're a CMO or if you're, kind of in that sort of position, because it might go under a different title. Connect with your CFO, like consider ways with that person that manages the finances to decrease the amount of money allocated to open positions or frozen positions and reallocate that back into your marketing budget. And when you lose staff because they're going to a job that pays more, reconsider that position that they left. And if you actually need someone in that position, or if you could take some of the budget from that salary and put it toward working with an agency, working with an outside partner, working with an independent contractor that can do that kind of work, because you will save money. The institution will save money in the long run, in most of those cases. And you'll see better results from those partnerships. And then when you're back to stability and have tons of money coming in and like are thriving, then you can reconsider going vertical and having all of those positions in house again. But I just don't think status quo in hiring and in staffing and in higher ed has been something relevant in 5 or 6 years, at least not since
Mhm.
the pandemic.
Yeah. All right. You heard it here first, folks. All right, Joel, where can people connect with you at?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Joel Goodman. I'm on Threads at Joel Goodman. I'm on Instagram at Joel Goodman. Also, Bravery Media is the business that I own. We're also on LinkedIn and Instagram and Threads. And you can go to bravery.co to learn more about the web and optimization and consulting services that we offer.
Awesome. Well, this has been great chatting. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening. 3 things I want to give you before you go. Number 1, reminder to sign up for my free weekly newsletter all about creating content that resonates emotionally with your audience. And you can do that at unveiled.tv/newsletter. Unveiled is spelled UNVEILD. Number 2, if you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Share it with your team, your boss, your dog, whatever. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to do that. Number 3, reach out to me. If you have comments, questions, you want to talk about a video project, whatever, my email is john@unveiled.tv. John is spelled JOHN. Or follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my last name is spelled AZONI. That's all for today, and I look forward to catching you on the next episode of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast. Thanks.